Hey guys, I'm back. This week we are going to talk about brownies, bars, blondies, things like that. This week I'm going to show you how to do the brownie recipe that's on the Canvas page for this week with a few tweaks to it. It's Abe's favorite recipe, but with a few tweaks that Justin really likes. So I think you guys will like it. The reason why I chose this recipe is because we temper in eggs, and I know we're going to talk about that this week, but that's really important to temper the chocolate into the eggs so you don't end up with scrambled eggs in your brownies, which is disgusting. So I have my stuff set up here. I have the chocolate and the butter melting over a bain-marie. So a bain-marie is just a pot with it has about 1.5 inches of water in the bottom of it, and I'll lift it up and show you. So just like that. And I have it simmering just on really low. You don't want it too hot to where it's boiling because that'll scorch the chocolate. So really low heat. You also don't want the water touching the bottom of the bowl. So if it's touching the bottom of the bowl, it's gonna get too much heat. So you wanna make sure that you have just a little bit of water in the bottom of the bowl, but the bowl sits above the water, if that makes sense, not down into the water. So chocolate and butter here. I whipped my eggs in my mixer just so, still have my broken mixer. I whipped my eggs in my mixer just so that I knew that they were uniformly combined and broken up a bit before I tried to temper in there. So I'm gonna get rid of this. And I have my flour and my salt and my cocoa powder that I'm gonna sift here. I chose, in the recipe, it calls for 10 ounces of bittersweet chocolate chopped. I chose to do milk chocolate chopped to fold in at the end. So I'm doing a full recipe, and I'm doing a full recipe so I can show you guys exactly how huge this recipe is. I want you guys to do a half recipe of this. It'll make a 13 by 9 pan, which looks like that. If you want to make it easy on yourself, put parchment paper in there and spray it down. Less cleaning. So I'm going to sift this cocoa powder. Cocoa powder is really important to sift because it likes to come into lumps, and you want to get those lumps out of there so it's dispersed throughout your bar. Okay, so cocoa powder sifted. Get that out of my way. And I am going to add my sugar to my melted butter and chocolate here. So I want to mix my butter and chocolate together. It's still really warm, but that sugar's going to cool it down quite a bit. We're still going to need to temper those eggs. So while I mix in the sugar, I'm going to explain what tempering is. So tempering is just bringing two items of different temperatures to the same temperature, or close to the same temperature. The thing is, if I were to add, even though those eggs have been in the mixer and they've been mixing for a while, if I put those cold eggs into this hot chocolate, they're gonna scramble, and that's nasty. So you would end up with pieces of cooked egg in your brownie, and that's not gonna cook out. You're gonna have pieces of scrambled egg, which is a really weird texture inside of your brownie. I used to do that all the time when I was little because I had nobody to tell me that I was doing it wrong or what I was doing wrong. So it's gonna look like this. It's cooled down quite a bit, but it's still really warm, and it's still gonna cook those eggs. Eggs start to coagulate at 130 degrees, actually 120 degrees. So now I'm gonna take a little bit of this chocolate mixture, so like half a cup or so, and I'm gonna mix it into those eggs. And what that's gonna do is just gonna bring it right up to temperature, and so it's not so shocking for those eggs when they go in. So I'm just mixing them in. You don't wanna plop that in there and then just walk away and go do dishes or whatever you do. You wanna mix it right in so it's being dispersed well. Excuse me. So once it's mixed, you're gonna add it in, excuse me, to the chocolate. And again, you wanna make sure, get everything out of that bowl, scrape it really well, but mix it in fairly quickly so it's not just sitting there cooking it. Get this stuff out of here. again, make sure you guys are doing your dishes as you go, cleaning your floors, washing your hands, doing all the things. So you can see already this is making a ton of brownies, which may sound like a good idea, but it's going to be more than the average family can consume, and it's a lot of ingredients. So cut this recipe in half. So I'm going to mix this in until the eggs are combined in, and it's a little harder to get those eggs in there, but I got it pretty much, just like that. Kind of almost looks like ganache, if you've ever made ganache, just like that. And I'm not doing this in a mixer because I don't want to add additional air to my brownies, because what will happen if you do that in a mixer is once it goes into the oven, it'll lift up and then it'll fall. You'll still get that little crackle look on the top, but I don't want them to souffle up and then fall. So now that that's mixed in, so you can mix this all day long, but when you add the flour is when it's go time. So remember, when the flour and the liquid meet, they start to form gluten strands, and the more you mix the gluten strands, the tougher they get, and the tougher your brownies are gonna get. So mixed in, I'm gonna add in my dry ingredients. And remember, also get your mise en place ready to go, just like we talked about last week. You don't want to forget an ingredient in here. It would be a real bummer if you forgot the cocoa powder or the salt. You want to make sure all those ingredients are in there. So I'm going to stir this up, and I'm just going to fold and stir like this. And then once I feel like it's about 3/4 of the way folded, I'm going to add in those chocolate pieces. So you guys at home, if you're going to do the brownies, you can do the dark chocolate pieces. You can do milk chocolate pieces. You could add in nuts. You could add in dried fruit if you wanted to. You could add in white chocolate. I know a lot of people like white chocolate. So I did milk chocolate. I'm going to add in my milk chocolate now, and I'm going to fold that in. So my batch is huge, so I have 2 pans sitting here. I put parchment paper down, and then I sprayed with pan spray on top of the parchment, just to make sure nothing was sticking to it. So once this is mixed together and I don't see any dry ingredients, and what happens in this sometimes is the dry ingredients will stick to that chocolate, but make sure you're scraping the bottom of that bowl and really checking to make sure there's no pockets of dry. So looks like that, delish. And I am going to spread it evenly into my 2 pans. So here we go, right here. My 2 pans, I'm gonna spread it as evenly as I can. So I sprayed it down, and then I put the parchment paper down, pushed it into the sides, and then sprayed it with just a pan spray. You don't need to. Parchment will help it so it doesn't stick. I like doing it so it kind of sticks to the sides. It helps it kind of adhere to the sides a little bit better, the parchment, so it's not moving a ton as you're trying to get it in there. But if you don't have pan spray at home, it's totally fine without it. But if you're not going to use parchment paper, you need to have some sort of pan spray down, or butter your pan. For something like brownies, you could butter it and then take some cocoa powder and put that down instead of flour, if you've ever buttered and floured like a cake pan so things don't stick. Okay, so you want to get all of that delicious brownie batter out of there. If you were working in a bakery, you would weigh this to make sure equal portions were in each pan, which may seem crazy to you, but you want things as uniform as possible. So I have an offset spatula I'm going to use so I'm getting all this off of here because this is brownie batter, delicious, but it's also money, so we don't want to waste any money here. So I'm going to spread this to the sides, and when you do the parchment, it kind of helps because you can see when it's to the edges, just like like that. And I just want it as flat as possible. Flat and even as possible. Okay. So that there. I'm going to use my spatula again to scrape that off. Make sure everything's in there nicely. If you get like a little pocket of cocoa powder, you can just do like that. Okay, so now this is the fun part. I'm gonna put marshmallows on top. So I have some little mini marshmallows. I'm just gonna spread those on top, just on enough to coat the top lightly. Just so each brownie, as you cut them out, has some marshmallow on it. Sprinkle it as best you can, but you don't want to overweigh it on top with marshmallows. Just like that. Okay, so these are gonna go into an oven. Depends on how warm your oven. The oven at school, I'm putting them in at 325. If you have a convection oven at home, definitely 325. If you have a regular standard oven, you can put them in at 350. Just keep an eye on it. The next ingredient will really tell you by the browning when it's kind of time to pull that out. So I'm also gonna put everybody's favorite cereal, Golden Grahams, on mine. So for these, I'm just gonna sprinkle them on top like that. And so what's gonna happen is the brownie's gonna cook up and around these guys and kind of cement them in. And you can kind of help try to put them, kind of push them down a little bit so they're in the brownies a little bit. And these will take about 30 minutes to cook in the oven. So the way to test them is to take a toothpick, and when the toothpick is inserted and it comes out clean in the middle, then you're good to go. If it comes out and you can see like wet batter, no go, put it back in. But if it comes out and you can see just a little crumbs on there, you're good to go. Don't get freaked out by that. And it's got a lot of butter in it. It's got the half recipe will have a half a pound of butter in it. That's a lot of butter, so it's gonna look greasy. So don't confuse greasy with raw. Raw, it'll look like that, shiny and like brownie batter. Greasy will just look like oils on your toothpick. Okay, so these are gonna go in the oven for 30 minutes, and then I'll come back on and show you what they look like. Okay, bye.